Well, class, it's good to talk to you again. This is your review video for biblical law, and excited about seeing how you guys do on the quiz. Just want you to know that I've been praying for each and every one of you every day, and looking forward to seeing you guys on Thursday. But wanted to give you a couple of review questions. And so, question number one, why study biblical law? I gave you 4 different reasons. Why do you study biblical law? First of all, Old Testament law teaches you what God thinks about a certain thing. It gives you a moral foundation on which to stand for, because all Scripture is profitable, and social order should be grounded on God's law, not on moral relativism. Those are the 4 reasons why we study biblical law. Think about this question. What are some Old Testament laws that are obsolete today? And I gave you 4 different illustrations there. Blood sacrifices, earthly priesthood, the temple, and ceremonial dietary laws. And so, obviously, there are some things that are obsolete. Question number 3. By the way, I'm not reading off the quiz, just in case you're wondering. But what is antinomianism? What is antinomianism? Of course, that is the belief that the law does not apply to a Christian, or Christians don't have to obey the law. Of course, we don't believe antinomianism. We do believe the law is applicable to all people. What is the body of Jewish civil and canonical law? What is the name of that? What do we call that? And of course, that is called the Talmud. The law in every culture is what in origin. The law in every culture is what in origin. If you remember right, we talked about the fact that all law is religious in nature. When we pass a law, it is because there's a certain belief system behind that law. And so all law is, in every culture, is religious in nature. And of course, the source of law in any society is what? It's the God of that society. If laws are righteous laws, then the God of the Bible is the God of society. If laws are man-made and based on man's belief about himself, then man is the God of that society. And so we looked at that. We looked at different special commandments found in the Bible. What is that most important commandment found in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 and 5? Remember, I mentioned it was a part of the Jewish morning and evening prayer, and that law is called the Shema, S-H-E-M-A, the Shema. We mentioned the royal law. What is the royal law? Well, hopefully you know that is, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. How about the golden rule? The golden rule found in Matthew chapter 7, verse 12. That is, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. We mentioned as well the first civil ordinance found in the Bible. Of course, that's found in Genesis chapter 9, verses 5 and 6. What is that first civil ordinance? And that was capital punishment. The very first law, in a sense, that God dealt with. The 10 Commandments are broken up into 2 different tables. Table number 1, which is Commandments 1 through 4, deal with what? And of course, if you know that, that is our relationship to God. Commandments number 5 through 10, the second table of the law, deals with our relationship to each other. And hopefully you said that. All right. What does the law do? What is its purpose? I gave you 3 different reasons for that. Purpose number 1, to show us of our sinfulness. And we saw that in Romans chapter 3, verse 19. Purpose number 2, to bring us to Christ. We mentioned that in Galatians chapter 3, verse 24. And purpose number 3, to give us grounds for basic morality. And we mentioned that. All right? Each commandment, and when we looked at the 10 Commandments, we said that most of the commandments were negative in nature. Why is that? Why are commandments written in a negative way versus a positive way? Of course, the answer to that we mentioned is the fact that if God would have written all the commandments in a positive fashion, the Bible would be, thousands of volumes long. And it's just easier to write things in a negative way. We said that according to the Shema, that God is a unity. He is one of many. And we mentioned that God is a Trinity. He is a Trinity. The Shema tells us that we ought to love God in what 3 ways? Of course, if you have that memorized, and hopefully you do, it would be with all thine heart, all thy soul, and with all thy might. And those are the 3 ways that the Shema tells us to love God, all right? Keeping God's commandments prove what? Keeping God's commandments prove what? And that, of course, would prove our love for him, all right? Does the Bible, does the commandment, does biblical law command for people to be put to death because of unbelief in God? Well, hopefully you said no. God never called for people to be put to death because of unbelief. For propagating false doctrine, yes. For trying to convert people to idolatry, yes. Not for unbelief. What about that concept that we talked about? How the 10 commandments are laid out versus the rest of the commandments in the Bible. Of course, we call the 10 commandments biblical principles, legal principles. That's what the commandments are. And underneath each of the biblical principles, we have a case law, and that would be different cases that were tried by judges in Israel, and certain legal truths that were found based off that case law. And finally, that case law was used as biblical application. We mentioned the example of thou shalt not steal. Of course, thou shalt not steal would be the biblical principle. The idea of thou shalt not muzzle the ox that treadeth out the corn would be the case law underneath thou shalt not steal. And then we mentioned that the Apostle Paul applied that principle in regards to pastoral pay, in saying, thou shalt not muzzle the ox that treadeth out the corn, and the laborer is worthy of his reward. And so that concludes our review there for quiz number 1. Once again, not everything I asked you will necessarily be on the quiz. Quiz questions may be asked in a different way in which I ask it, but this information should give you a good idea of what kind of questions are on the quiz. Praying that you do well. God bless.